It's been a fairly popular topic across the Locked On Podcast Network, and the question has been, why can X team win the national championship in 2025? I have resisted taking the bait, but I'm finally going to take the plunge, and we're going to answer the question, why are the BYU Cougars going to be celebrating a national championship a year from now?
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And more importantly, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On College, and get $20 off your first purchase. All right, coming up on today's show, we're going to answer the question, why are the BYU Cougars poised to make a national title run this coming season? We'll also talk about a big loss and a big gain for BYU football that came out on Wednesday, and then we'll finish up today's show by looking at Dybantsa. Is he at risk of becoming also ran, according to some people out there? We'll get into that momentarily, but let's start today's show and talk about a question that I have seen answered across a number of my sister shows here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And the question is, why are the BYU Cougars going to be the national champions next year? Well, why aren't they going to be the national champions next year? That's my question. I guess my question to answer the question. The bigger point to be made here is BYU is going to start next season inside the top 20 in the country. That is a position from which you can strike and make the college football playoff, which opens the door to winning a national title. And B, the nice part is BYU's got a bevy of the guys who led them to an 11-2 record this past season back on this year's team. So why not? With another year of development, another year of working on their skills, another year of continuity in this football program, why couldn't BYU win the national title? That is the hot take I guess I'm going to get across to you guys today, is that BYU, they should be fairly confident in what they have returning on this football program. Yes, there are guys who are exiting the program, particularly on the defensive front, that were pivotal and important pieces to help BYU get to the level they got to this past year. But via the transfer portal and some pretty high-level recruiting, BYU has upgraded that position group in particular on the defensive line, and I'm feeling pretty bullish about its potential to exceed or at least match at minimum what the defensive line did for BYU this past year. That's just one position group. You look at the offensive line, it's going to be retooled a little bit, but TJ Woods has shown in a very short time, he's got capability of putting together a very cohesive unit that is going to protect the quarterback, open lanes for BYU's running backs, and help them do their thing. And then beyond that, you look at the skill talent. I use that term lightly because there's a lot of skill in the trench play that BYU relies upon, but the skill talent, whether it's quarterback, running back, wide receivers, tight ends, on the defensive side of the football, the linebackers, the secondary, there are talented players returning in droves across those different position groups for BYU. And it's always a good thing to have a senior quarterback leading the program, speaking of BYU. Historically, some of the greatest seasons, if not the greatest seasons in BYU football history, have routinely had an upperclassman, if not a senior, calling the signals at quarterback. And that's what they will have in Jake Retzloff leading BYU into this season. At running back, it looks like LJ Martin, should he have a healthy offseason, he is just barely coming into his own, it feels like, and the best is yet to come from him in the running back position. And the nice part is there's other depth pieces around him. Sione Aimoa, you also look at Pokai Haunga offers to the mix. You have guys like Kel Breslin coming into this program. At wide receiver, expected to have your top two targets coming back in Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter. Then beyond that, you have Parker Kingston out there. You have JoJo Phillips. You have so many guys at that wide receiver position. Cody Hagan, who's a former four-star prospect, Dominique McKenzie, who's looking forward to making a move of his own. The depth and the breadth of the talent for BYU on offense should lend itself to BYU being a very potent offensive attack this year, so long as that offensive line is operating the way that I think TJ Woods will have it operating in time. Flipping over to the defense, you have your entire linebacking core coming back, and they were absolutely stellar, the trio of Jack Kelly, Harrison Taggart, and Isaiah Glasker. Absolute dynamite. Maury Bomba figures to come back and hold down at least one part of BYU's secondary at cornerback. If you can get a guy like Marcus McKenzie, the twin brother of the aforementioned Dominic McKenzie, to really come into his own as a cornerback finally, you could have a really nice tandem of corners, but there's other bodies there. Evan Johnson showed some really nice things this year. At safety, Tanner Wall, the bullet that is Tanner Wall, is back at free safety for BYU, and Raider Demooney came on very strong at the strong safety position this past year. There is a ton of pieces leading BYU into 2025, and they should be confident that they were not that far off from making the college football playoff. Yes, had the ball bounced off of Evan Johnson's helmet, or not bounced off Evan Johnson's helmet against Kansas, BYU very well is playing for a Big 12 title. Or had Jake Retzlaff been able to hook up with JoJo Phillips in the waning seconds of that game at Arizona State, they may have won that game, upended Arizona State, and punched their ticket that way to the Big 12 title game, and maybe lived the dream of playing in the college football playoff. And who knows what would have happened had they actually gotten into the field. The chatter after BYU absolutely demolished Colorado was, why wasn't BYU given more opportunities to make it as an at-large team in the college football playoff? I'm one of those people who wondered why BYU was written off so heavily by the college football playoff committee. But as I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, for those of you who are everydayers, the fact that BYU finished 13th and is still behind programs like an Indiana and most notably an SMU team that they beat head-to-head in the final polls, there's going to be a chip on the collective shoulder of this BYU football program, and that could be the impetus or be the catalyst that gets them over the top and leads them to program-defining glory in this day and age of college football. We all know that BYU has a national championship trophy. We just celebrated the 40-year anniversary of it this past season. It's been 4 decades since BYU was the nation's best back in 1984. Could 41 years on BYU hoist another national championship and do it under the brightest lights that have ever been put on BYU football? That's a big question mark that will only be answered in time, but who am I to say that BYU can't win a national title in 2025? I'd technically be 2026 by the time the national title game takes place. But wouldn't it be awesome to be here in mid to late January next year and be having a parade throughout Utah, Salt Lake City, Provo, wherever they want to have it, and celebrate BYU winning a natty? That's the dream that I think every Cougar fan yearns for. And I can't say that it can't happen. And the biggest thing that's going to make it a reality, if it's going to happen, is BYU betting on themselves, and obviously the continuity continuing to play a major factor, having that collective chip on their shoulder like they played with for long stretches of this past season. And then the final thing, got to have some luck. Simple fact of the matter is that it's an oblong ball that bounces different ways, and you got to have it bounce your way more often than not. And if BYU can get all that put together, there's no reason to think that they can't win a national championship. And I, for one, would love nothing more than to be along for the ride for a national title run with the BYU Cougars. All right. I mentioned earlier that BYU won and lost on Wednesday with some announcements from some of their players. Well, you want to talk about guys that could help BYU win a national title? Both of them very well could have played key roles in a potential title run for BYU. One of them is returning. I think it's a big returner. But also one of them leaves a pretty sizable hole, and we'll get to both of those momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends, a new friend over at Talkspace. Of course, therapy is a game changer for many of us. It helps you manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule like I have can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace is the leading virtual therapy provider, making it easy to help you get easy, accessible, and affordable therapy all online. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. All you can do is you match up with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours, and it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your own home and even message your therapist between your appointments as well. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health, so take advantage of this opportunity today. And as a listener of Locked On Cougars, you will get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter the promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for Locked On Cougars. That's Talkspace once again, /LockedOn, promo code SPACE80. Take advantage of this offer from our friends over at Talkspace. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us every single day here on the podcast. Truly is awesome to see the support that you guys are continuing to give this show. But BYU fans both got good news and bad news on Wednesday in the form of two player announcements. Now, the good news was the one that kicked it off, so we'll start there. And that was that Jack Kelly is running it back with BYU for 2025. Obviously, a transfer in from Weber State, and he absolutely matched, if not outright exceeded, the hype about him transferring in as a not junior college, a FCS All-American at Weber State. And there was some question, could he really become the star player that he was for Weber State and do it for BYU? Well, the answer, looking back on it from 2024, is absolutely 100% yes. He was absolutely awesome for the BYU Cougars. And to get him back after he was being projected on draft boards by Mel Kiper as a middle, like 5 out of 10 outside linebacker prospects in the entire NFL draft at one point, indicates that he is a guy who wants to get it right and run it back with BYU and improve upon his draft stock. What I love about Jack Kelly is he is an unassuming young man who you don't get any sort of big time feeling from him. He is a guy that when I've talked to him, he comes off as, like I said, really unassuming, really quiet, almost shy to a level, but his play on the field speaks volumes beyond what his demeanor off the field is. He has shown an ability to be an incredible linebacker for this BYU defense. And I mentioned it earlier, the trio of him, Harrison Taggart, and Isaiah Glasker, their strengths complement each other so well that trio, I'm super excited to see what they're capable of in this upcoming season, because they showed so many different things and the ability to rush the passer, to play stingy run defense, to drop into cover and come up with game-changing interceptions. Everything that they flashed on the field, the trio of them, indicates that BYU's strength of their defense going into 2025, it's going to reside with the linebackers, at least at the outset of the season. And it doesn't preclude anything from the secondary of the defensive line from taking that from them, but they have got a really high level to achieve if they're going to steal that title, as it were, away from BYU's linebacking core. Jack running it back with BYU is awesome because his ability to play at all three levels that BYU requires their linebackers to play at, it's preternatural. He's got the ability to absolutely wreck shop when he comes as a pass rusher. That was the one thing that BYU, I think, was hoping most from him coming into BYU in year one in the program, and he showed that ability. But the best part was he became a very strong run defender at the point of attack, and even dropping into space when it came to coverage in the secondary. He showed that ability as well. So it feels like in so many ways that Jack very easily could have said, you know what, I've done what I want to do at BYU. I'm going to go test my self at the next level. And I wouldn't have blamed him one bit. But the fact that he decided, you know what, I want to run it back with this team one more time. I want to see what I'm able to accomplish with the BYU football program means he's bought into the culture and what Kalani Sitake and Jay Hill have brought to BYU. And that's a guy who is, like I said, he may not be the most boisterous or outspoken leader that BYU has on that defense. In fact, I think he'd be down the list significantly, but he's a team captain for a reason. And the nice part is his actions speak volumes beyond what his actual words may say. And that's what I can appreciate, is him deciding to run it back and believing that I can go out there and really improve what I've already done at BYU and build upon it. And if he builds upon it, that means BYU's defense is going to be even more stingy than it was this past year. And we all saw with our own eyes how good BYU's defense was. Now, the bad news, to flip over, came shortly thereafter with Caleb Etienne, BYU standout left tackle from this past season, announcing that he was going to leave the BYU football program and enter the NFL draft. I can tell you, talking with multiple people, that in the lead up to this, I was hearing everything that, hey, he's going to run it back for BYU, and that's going to hold down the left side of BYU's offensive line. Him and Waylon Lapuaho would have been the left side, strong side for BYU's offensive line next year. But Caleb finally got the feedback, it appears, from the NFL, whatever that may have been, the committee that seems to give that feedback, age, whatever it might have been. He got the feedback he was looking for, and he's going to test himself to the next level. Caleb's transformation from a guy who you couldn't play. Like, remember 2023, he was downright unplayable at points during that season. To go from that to being an all Big 12 honoree at left tackle the very next year, what a story. What a transformation, and what indication of what coaching can do for a young man when a coach believes in them. I got nothing. I don't have very many bad things to say about Daryl Funk, but what was he doing with Caleb Etienne that when TJ Woods shows up, TJ Woods transforms him into an all Big 12 player? That's the thing about this is coaching brought out the best in Caleb Etienne, and I wish him the best. I hope he ends up as a mid-round pick. I think he's going to test extremely well at the next level. He's got all the length, the size, the athleticism, the height you want in a prototypical offensive tackle. And he will continue. BYU should be 4 for 4 with their previous 4 offensive left tackles being drafted in the NFL draft. That's a pretty stellar track record BYU's got. And the nice part is all 4 of them appear to be have longevity to last at the next level. We've already seen Brady Christensen do really, really good things with the Carolina Panthers. I believe he's a free agent this year for the first time. We'll see where he ultimately lands. Blake Freeland, he's been very, very steady for the Indianapolis Colts. Kingsley Suamataia had up and down moments with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he's playing for a championship caliber franchise. And now Caleb Etienne gets to add his name to that list. I wish him nothing but the best. And I sincerely would have loved to have seen him run it back for BYU because I truly think that offensive line could have been awesome with him holding down that left side with Waylon Lapuaho. But you bring in a guy like Andrew Gentry, who on my radio show a couple of weeks ago said that when he gets back, when he's finally cleared from this Lisfranc injury, there's not supposed to be any restrictions on him. He steps into that left tackle spot, and he's got to be thinking, okay, the previous 4 guys here went to the NFL. I'm going to make it 5 for 5. That's the nice part about what BYU did in the transfer portal is they went out and found guys to come in and fill in gaps on that offensive line that needed to be retooled. I've got a lot of confidence that TJ Woods will get it right with BYU's offensive line. I think that Andrew Gentry is the odds-on favorite to be your starting left tackle come Portland State 219 days away from today. But I think the bigger point to be made is Caleb Etienne, what a transformation. What a story. And I wish him absolutely nothing but the best as he moves forward with his career. This is a kid who came into BYU, had no natural connections to the university. Remember, he was essentially lambasted and torn to shreds by his previous head coach and Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, saying he didn't want to compete. He didn't want to, you know what? I think that put him in a pretty bad headspace in 2023. Well, the nice part is BYU built him up. He bought into the culture. I can tell you my conversations with him. He was a pleasant human being to interact with, and not to mention just a gigantic human being. I cannot believe the size of some of these offensive linemen these days, and Caleb Etienne is right up there among the biggest I've ever seen. All of 6'8", an incredibly wide frame, and I am looking forward to seeing what he does at the next level because I think he could do some pretty special things given what he accomplished in a relatively short time as a BYU Cougar. And I wish him well. And like really, really cool story. So yeah, up and down day for BYU getting Jack Kelly back officially, but losing Caleb Etienne. And the nice part is I think both of them have really unique stories and really cool stories to tell, and they're not fully written quite yet. And we'll obviously be privy to be able to watch all those play out over time. Now, a guy whose story has been written for quite literally years, all of a sudden has got people saying that he's falling from grace. What is going on here with AJ Dybantsa? Are we looking at a guy who needs to completely reset what he's trying to do? We'll delve into that as we wrap up this edition of Locked On Cougars next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Of course, attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other if you have the opportunity to do it. The energy, the excitement, the connection with other fans is unmatched. Obviously, all of us want to go out and support our teams, and this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature called Game Time Picks. It filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters most, and that's simply put is being there. Obviously, all of us use the Game Time Picks feature. If you've used the Game Time app, Helps you find incredible deals on great seats. And my favorite part is they have curated deals, make it easier to find the best price on great seats. The super deal is the best value for that event. They'll essentially match you with the best tickets for the money. And also they have seat views before you buy, on-time ticket delivery. And also what I love is the all-in pricing feature. You toggle it in the app, you'll know exactly what you're paying right up front with fees included. You're not having to worry about that. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and of course, it's all guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Well, I encourage you guys, if you haven't done so already, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group today. Be a part of it. Really, really busy and fun offseason ahead. And obviously, I'll give you all the inside intel I can muster every single day via text messages. That's the best part about it. It's about as, excuse me, intimate as it gets. Man, I'm going to make it through one of these podcasts without coughing after the remnants of this flu. But nonetheless, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. You get 2 weeks of a free trial before you pay anything, and it's just $5 a month afterwards to be a part of it. Would encourage many of you, if not thousands of you, to join us today. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk some BYU basketball. And two stories that popped up on 24/7 Sports and then The Athletic essentially asked the same question. Is AJ Dybantsa's fall, is he falling from grace? I guess is probably the best overarching theme of this. And the biggest thing was that he was playing at the Hoop Hall Invitational this past weekend up in his native, where he grew up in Massachusetts area. And they essentially wrote that Dybantsa is playing for the cameras right now. Obviously, we've all seen the highlight reels, that dunk, the underneath the legs dunk he had out in Hawaii not that long ago playing for Utah Prep Academy. And the stories from 24/7 Sports and The Athletic essentially say, what is AJ doing? He's like screwing around when he's out there on the court, and he's playing for Instagram. He's playing for the highlight reels, and it's affecting the overall play for Utah Prep Academy. As The Athletic noted, that the way he was playing in the first half of their Hoop Hall Classic game over the weekend, one of them, he got Utah Prep in a really, really deep hole by essentially forcing the action in that game, where it felt like he was essentially just playing for the cameras. And then in the second half, he locked in, got back to playing the style of basketball that has people absolutely falling in love with him as a prospect, and almost helped eventually it'll be BYU, helped Utah Prep kind of grind their way out of the hole they had dug in the first half, and he had dug in the first half. So the thing about it is they're talking about him saying, okay, this guy's 6'9". He is the best young player that's not in the NBA today. And that's regardless of recruiting class right now. You can argue with a wall if you think otherwise. 6'9", as The Athletic points out, they think of Jason Tatum's 3-level playmaking and defensive technique meets Jaylen Brown's explosiveness through the paint. That is about as enticing a prospect as you can find in the world of basketball that's not in the NBA right now. And guess who is going to have him playing for them next year? Oh, the little old BYU Cougars. I don't know what to make of this. I think the story it's kind of what I've heard from so many people for so long is when guys come back, obviously for another year or two at college programs, whether it's football or basketball, after having standout seasons, their tape gets absolutely scrutinized to a level where it almost becomes a detractor for them. And remember, AJ Dybantsa has been like this, the heir apparent of college basketball, if not the NBA, for 4, maybe 5 years. Remember, he was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Massachusetts, Brockton, Massachusetts, as a freshman in high school as a 14-year-old. He was absolute dynamite. He's been playing on the prep scene for the prep, AAU / elite prep circuit for years now. And are we seeing essentially him being broken down so much that all of a sudden people are like, well, I got to find the thing that's wrong with AJ Dybantsa. Maybe so. But here's the deal. What I've seen from AJ Dybantsa, everything I hear from him when he talks to the media, is this is a kid who knows that he has got an incredible, incredible gift for playing basketball, and he is going to make an incredible, incredible amount of money in his career. He is part of a generation of NBA superstars that, given health and given the longevity that most NBA players anticipate playing for in this day and age, he could make $1 billion $1 billion in on-court earnings. That does not include his endorsements. He already has endorsements from Red Bull, Nike. Obviously, BYU is paying a hefty sum in NIL to have him play for the Cougars next year. I'm just looking at this, and I get what they're saying, because they're talking about like one of the Boozer twins maybe taking the title away from him as the top prospect in the world. Go for it. What I know about AJ Dybantsa, what I understand about him, is that will only fuel the fire for him. He has got an incredible gift, once again, for basketball. And I think this is a kid who would love nothing more than to have people doubt him a little bit, because I think it would give him a little extra motivation to go out there and just show what he's capable of. So, no, I don't think that AJ Dybantsa is his star is falling where BYU fans should be like, oh, are we getting into bed with something that's going to be a bad deal? No. AJ Dybantsa is still going to be, barring something completely unforeseen, he'll be the top pick in the NBA draft in 2026. That's how good a player this kid is. Excuse me. But I think we're looking at kind of what the future is going to hold with regards until he enrolls at BYU, is that we're going to see people scrutinizing him to such a level that they almost have no other choice, because he's so elite as a player. He's like reached the pinnacle of being a player, that essentially comes down on the other side a little bit, where he starts to get nitpicked just a little bit too much. So I don't make too much of this, honestly. I look at it that, okay, AJ Dybantsa is a really, really good basketball player, and people want to find a fault with him. Great. Find a fault with him, because all I see the best basketball player I've seen in quite some time. I've said it before on this podcast. His recruiting ranking, his rating, I guess I should say, from 24/7 Sports, those are the ratings that, man, I apologize, come from the top-rated players in all of basketball history. Remember, LeBron James never went to college, but he had a 100 rating from 24/7 Sports. Carmelo Anthony had that. He is, speaking of AJ Dybantsa, he's at that same level as a prospect. He's got a 100, a perfect rating from 24/7 Sports, and that's just one of a bevy of different recruiting services out there who are breaking him down. But he has proven time and time again that he is the premier talent in college basketball and high school basketball at this point, prep basketball, I should say. And I'm looking forward to being able to watch him for 30-ish games that BYU plays next year with him on the roster. And I for one, I don't care what people say right now. Everything I see from him shows that, yeah, I see why people want him, and I see why the NBA is salivating over the chance to get him in 2 years' time. So I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here, but when you see two different stories from 24/7 Sports and The Athletic essentially asking the same question, I question if they're just trying, like, they're just nitpicking so locked in on this kid that they essentially can't find anything other than to criticize him just a little bit. But hey, maybe he is playing a little bit too much for the camera. Maybe he's locked back in. But if he locks back in, what we've already seen from him is a pretty darn good basketball player. And I think BYU, lucky to have that kid pick the Cougars, because the hype machine that's going to come with him going to be pretty crazy. But we'll see how it ultimately all plays out. But crazy scenes to see those stories pop up on the same day. So I figured I'd dig into it just a little bit and kind of give my 2 cents on the matter. All right, that's going to do it. Obviously, a big thank you as always for all your support of the podcast. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day whenever you hear and or watch this. Please continue to share this with your family and friends. If you're new to the show, like the show, whether you're watching this on YouTube, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast in the audio format. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And hopefully all of you, once again, will be with us every single day, as we like to call them, our everydayers, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.